It's official. We're entering into yet another eclipse season as we move into the month of August, which means that fate is about to take the reins once again and lead us on a brand new path that's more aligned with our destiny. Eclipses bring events that are highly karmic, turbulent, synchronistic, and sometimes downright strange. And with the karmic lunar nodes freshly transiting the signs of Aquarius and Leo, the eclipses in August are bringing a rare energy and fated transitions that we only experience roughly once every 18.6 years when the nodes change into these signs. Not only that, but the basket formation that we talked about in my July forecast is still going strong through the middle of the month in August, which is being paired with that very first eclipse on August 12th. And even after we leave the month of August, that minor triangle, that minor grand trine formation that we've been talking about between Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto is still ongoing and still going to be super potent for at least a couple of years. In this video, I'm going to give you a full rundown of what to expect in the month of August, the fated changes that are awaiting you in the month ahead, and I'm going to stop along the way after every single transit we discuss to let you know which signs are going to be impacted the most and how. But before we fully dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you never miss an important astrology update. I do try to upload a new video every single Saturday around 9 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, although this month I was a little thrown off by Barbault's basket and the way that it hit my chart, which we're going to recap in just a second here. And also make sure you like this video, comment below and let me know how your month is going so far and how the basket formation in July has been treating you. And make sure you share this video with a friend who you feel like could benefit from the information that I'm sharing with you today. All right, so let's dive in. Now, before we move forward into the month ahead, we do need to do a quick recap of what happened in the month of July because a lot of that energy, as I mentioned before, is still playing out in this month ahead. And so if you haven't already watched my July forecast, make sure you go back and do that after this video to get a fuller, more comprehensive overview of what's going on this month, because again, it's still so strong in August. But last month, the highlight of the month was Barbault's basket formation, which was a series of trines and sextiles and an opposition between Jupiter, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune. And this is a historically rare configuration. We haven't seen anything even remotely close to this since 480 AD, and even then it was nowhere near as tight as it was this time around. Basically what happened is all of these outer planets, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, all were lingering at 4 degrees in the signs that they were in and making sextiles to one another and trines to one another. And Pluto and Jupiter were in an opposition around July 20th that was very intense, that could bring massive changes in direction, massive extreme windfalls, massive extreme changes in fortune, but it could have been a lot more than we bargained for. And at the start of July, Barbault's basket was kicked off by a Mars conjunction to Uranus, bringing about unexpected and shocking revelations, changes, things that came up very suddenly that we had to deal with. But because of all of these sextiles and supportive aspects, we did have support to make it through and to deal with the ramifications of the changes that were coming up that needed to take place at this time. I mean, it was just something that came in and showed us an area where we were stuck, we were frustrated, where we needed to make a change, and the outer planets are there to support us in continuing to make that change through the month of August and beyond. As we moved deeper into the month, the basket formation became very tight, and from the 15th through the 24th, all of these aspects, all of these outer planet aspects with one another came exact. And so what I was seeing in my personal life, through friends, through students, through clients, just through day-to-day interactions with other people, was that the lead up to the basket formation was quite intense for a lot of people. And I'm going to chalk that up to the Mars-Uranus conjunction, but there was a lot going on there, and we were building and building and building toward this energy. And so for some people, they experienced this as extreme challenge and things that came out of nowhere to sort of knock the wind out of you and force you to change course. Some of this was extreme changes that were really positive, but were very overwhelming and stressful. For other people, they experienced this as a lot of positive, harmonious action going on in their lives. But again, most people felt like a lot was going on all at once, assuming they were being hit really hard by the basket formation and they had planets that were sitting around the first few degrees of any of the signs that were being impacted, really any of the zodiac signs, because there was just so many energies energies being scattered about the chart during this time period. And so the peak of this intensity, the peak of this energy has already occurred as we're moving into the month of August, but it's still playing out. We can still see a lot of these challenges, especially with the Jupiter-Pluto opposition, but we can also see a lot of the benefits, the synchronicities, the harmonious energy that's there to help guide us so we can take action on something that needs to be acted upon. This is not a one and done situation. This is about cultivating and creating long-term change through the choices that we make, through the actions that we take, through actively engaging with opportunities and energies and support systems as they show up in our lives to help us mitigate and navigate the challenges that we're also facing right now. That said, the start of August is not without its own set of challenges. We're going to be dealing with a very intense T-square between Mars, Venus, and Neptune in the cardinal signs throughout the entire first half of the month in August before we even enter into the eclipses. Now, this will be kicked off on July 29th when Mars comes into a square with Venus exact on that date, and then it's going to continue on until Mars hits Neptune in a square, which will happen exact on August 17th, just after the Leo eclipse. Now, luckily, by the time this happens, Venus is out of its fall in the sign of Virgo and it's moved into its home sign of Libra. And so while we're dealing with a fallen Mars, which has a lot of passive aggressive energy in the sign of Cancer, we're also dealing with a Venus that's a little bit more equipped to handle this energy. What I will say though is that with Neptune in the mix in the sign of Aries, with this T-square forming, this is going to be a time where deception is going to be much more prevalent and prominent in relationships, and people are going to be very, very prone to more passive aggressive types of arguments and disputes. This is especially going to be the case for anyone who has strong energy at the early degrees of the cardinal signs, which are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. So if that is you, just have an awareness around the fact that certain relationships, and it doesn't have to be romantic relationships or even friendships, just connections and interactions in your day-to-day life are not always going to be what they seem in the month of August. It's also a time where you might be prone to becoming more passive aggressive depending on how this is hitting you. And so you want to make sure that you're expressing yourself clearly and directly, and that you're looking at the other person's perspective. You're leaning into that Venus, because Venus in Libra is all about understanding the other, understanding the unique perspective of another individual, even if it's not the same as yours, and putting yourself in their shoes so you can have compassion, so you can have a sense of connection, so you can maybe not get so upset that they're upset because you can kind of see their point. And of course, you might be on the receiving end of some passive aggressive energy. Mars will be in the sign of Cancer for quite a while, and that tends to be a hallmark of Mars energy in the sign of Cancer. Mars likes to be very straightforward, very blunt, very direct. It likes to get things done. And when it comes to the way that Mars expresses anger, it's also very direct. It gets very heated and angry in the moment, but it's able to let things go when that moment has passed. When Mars is in the sign of Cancer, that is not the case. There is a harboring of resentment. There is a holding in of emotions. There is a roundabout sideways way that people approach their expression of anger. And it really does come up as being very passive aggressive or very indirect. And so that leads us directly into the eclipses, the first one being on August 12th. But before we dive into that, we need to do a little bit of a backstory on what eclipses are, how they impact us collectively and individually, and also a little bit about the lunar nodes because they've just changed signs. And so we get a new eclipse season roughly once every 6 months, and the eclipses are predicted by the position of the lunar nodes and the sun and moon. The lunar nodes, which are these karmic points in astrology that represent a path that we're moving into and a path that maybe is unraveling or that we're moving away from. These represent our karma, our destiny, our soul's evolution through multiple existences, multiple lifetimes even. These lunar nodes are fated points that guide us toward our destiny. And the North Node in astrology is all about this insatiable urge to move in a brand new direction, this excitability vulnerability, this craving for something new, something expansive. It's very physical, and it's very much something that feels like we are directing it and guiding it to a certain extent, but deep down we know that we're not. And so when the North Node is involved in something, especially by transit, it's kind of like we feel so intensely that we need to go in a certain direction that we don't have a choice, because really we don't. The North Node is known as Rahu in Vedic astrology. The South Node is Ketu. Rahu is the dragon's head without the tail. It's all intellect and no instinct. It's something that we don't have an instinct for because we've never done it in this incarnation or in previous incarnations. And so we might be a little haphazard. We might rush. We might fall and stumble because we make some really big mistakes because we're going just straight up based on what we're seeing, what we're hearing. We're not going based on our gut, our instinct, our experience, our wisdom, which is Ketu. Ketu, the dragon's tail, is very instinctual. It's very intuitive, but it is being guided by something it can't see. And so when you have a South Node energy with the eclipses, it feels like we're being dragged along for the ride. Like there are signs, there are synchronicities, there are things that are showing up in our lives that we have to engage with, but we can't quite see exactly where this is headed. We don't feel like we have any actual agency over where this is taking us. It's kind of like we're just being led in a certain direction, and that's where we're going, and the external circumstances are aligning to create this new reality, and we don't have a choice. And so the eclipses are amplifications of this North and South Node energy, where fate takes the reins, where we are being thrown in a brand new direction. They're historically known as times of turbulence, of upheaval, where our lives can be upended and turned upside down, and we might be going in one direction and all of a sudden we are going a completely different way. But even though it's changed, even though it's turbulent, even though it can be a little bit challenging in the moment, the eclipses always take us on the journey we need to take. They are part of our destiny. The whole point of the eclipses is to realign the area of life that's being impacted, so that way we are more in tune with the path of our soul's growth and evolution. We are more in tune with our fate, with where we are supposed to be headed. The events that come up as a result of the eclipses are predetermined events. I don't know if we have free will or not, but what I like to believe is that we are always doing this dance between fate, circumstance, and free will. And the astrology often shows that. We can often act within a spectrum of energies and archetypes and possibilities that are presented to us through the astrology. But there are certain points where all of the timelines converge, and something that was going to happen no matter what is going to happen no matter what. The eclipses are those convergence points. And if you want to do a deep dive into the eclipses, which are some of the most life-changing energies in astrology, these are the moments where your whole life pivots, where everything is different, where one moment you feel like you're walking a certain path and the next moment it's completely different, and maybe you're okay with that. These are the pivotal energies for making predictions in astrology, and you can learn how to do that for yourself or for friends and family or even clients in my Karmic Power of Eclipses workshop. In this workshop, we're going to be covering everything from your lunar node placements to being born under an eclipse to your pre and postnatal eclipses. You're also going to learn how to predict eclipse strength and signification, so you can understand how the eclipses are going to be impacting you the most. You'll learn which eclipses are going to be big ones for you and which ones are maybe not so much and might not actually manifest as anything in your life. And this is knowledge that you can take with you for many, many years, for the rest of your life even, because these eclipses come around literally every 6 months. And so every 6 months we have this destiny point, this shift where something new can take hold, and I want you to be prepared for it. So my Karmic Power of Eclipses workshop is on sale for 50% off through the end of August. You can find the link down in the description below. And so the eclipse that we're going to be experiencing on August 12th of 2026 is a South Node eclipse. That means there's going to be a sense of familiarity, even around new choices, new paths, things that show up in very synchronistic and strange ways that you've never encountered before. All of it's going to feel like, yeah, this is supposed to happen. It's going to feel more comfortable. It's going to feel like, okay, this is of course the way it is, even though it doesn't make any sense in logical reality. And because this is a total solar eclipse, this is also a new moon energy. The South Node is an energy energy of weakening, of unraveling, of letting things go, of giving it up to God. This is about endings and moving on, but this is also about new beginnings that are tied to our past experiences, talents and gifts that we've been harnessing for many lifetimes maybe. This is about a fated change that involves having to release something that no longer serves us so we can move into a new path that's more aligned. It can feel like a weakening. It can feel like an unraveling. And because this is happening in the sign of Leo, it can be a very humbling moment. This is a massive cosmic reset where we are being asked to let go of aspects of ourselves that are no longer authentic to who we truly are deep down on the inside, aspects of ourselves that are holding us back from accomplishing our biggest goals, from moving into our real destiny, from being seen for what we're actually meant to be recognized for. This is an energy where we need to let go of recognition for the sake of recognition. Jupiter is in the mix as well. So there is this energy here of expanding on our persona, expanding on the unique talents and gifts that we're here to provide and put out there into the world. But there's also this energy here of, why are you doing this? Right? Are you doing this because it's authentic? Are you getting recognition for something because it is truly aligned with your path? Or are you doing it because it's what you feel like you're supposed to do? Are you doing it because you feel like it's what gets you attention, because you're craving that attention? You can't do that anymore with the South Node transiting the sign of Leo, which we will also talk about in my forecast for all 12 signs for the nodes shifting into Aquarius and Leo. It might already be out by the time this video is out, or it might be out just a couple days later. I don't know. My whole schedule got jumbled this month and my uploads are all over the place, but it will exist, so watch that next. But the main point is that this is a moment of stepping back down to earth. This is a moment of getting your ego in check. This is a moment of releasing anything that you are doing just because you feel like you need to be seen as special in some way, just because it's flashy, it's showy, it's dramatic, it's over the top. This is not a time to instigate anything that gets you recognition for the sake of fame and recognition. That's not what this is about. This is about authentic leadership and stepping into that. And this is about definitely letting go of anything that is not truly authentic to you, that you are being recognized for. And it can be a humbling experience because some of you might not want to let that go. You might push forward with it, and the South Node could bring in something that causes you to feel ashamed, embarrassed, that causes the thing that you've been known for to unravel in some way, in order to make space for you to move into the thing that you are meant to be doing here in this lifetime. This is a new moon energy, so it's all about new beginnings. And because it is the first new moon, the first total solar eclipse in the sign of Leo after the true node version of the South Node has moved into Leo, at least, the mean node will move into the sign of Aquarius actually on August 20th. But with the true node in the sign of Leo, this is technically fully in Leo when it comes to eclipse calculations. And so this is the first step. This is the first shock and awe moment. This is the first revelatory energy where the signs, the synchronicities, the path shows up for you, the people show up for you. Everything feels very strange and like it's predetermined. Like there's this energy here where you have to follow this thread. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to messages, downloads, inspiration. Pay attention to things that happen by chance that just cannot be coincidence because they're not during the eclipse season. Because all of this is meant to guide you, and it's not just guiding you right now during this eclipse season, it's showing you what you're going to be shifting and changing, the major upheavals, the major turning points that are going to be affecting your chart and your life for the next 18 months ahead. So this is a big pivotal moment. And these eclipses, these total solar eclipses, are always the strongest ones. That's something we talk about in the karmic power of eclipses. And so this is where we're going to be feeling it really intensely. And so for those of you who have your sun, moon, rising in the sign of Leo, you're going to be feeling this the most, and you're in for a whole experience. Like your life at the end of this next 18 months is going to look nothing like it does right now. This is a pivotal moment where there's a before and after. And this is also a time where you're going to move into opportunities to express yourself in a way that's more authentic, to connect and create in a way that's more heartfelt. And the only major aspect that this particular eclipse is making is a trine to Saturn, which is at its fall in the sign of Aries. And so it's a little bit of a weak energy with this trine. Saturn has the ability to help you create a framework for something. It's kind of like you're building off of something from the past that's sort of haphazard. Saturn also has its own karmic implications. It's always a reap what you've sown type of energy. So this is going to show you where you have sown seeds for something that are not quite right, that are falling apart, that were maybe haphazard or pushed through in a way that was hasty. And this is going to show you how to build something better that's more true to yourself and true to your path. Which brings me to who's going to be affected more positively versus more challenged by this eclipse. And so the most positive experiences with this eclipse are going to be people who have sun, moon, rising, or any personal planets in the fire signs, especially the sign of Sagittarius. Aries, you're going to get a little bit of a reprieve because you've been dealing with Saturn at its fall transiting your sign, and Mars is about to come in and, mess stuff up there too because it's in the sign of Cancer. It's going to be squaring Saturn. We'll talk about that at the end of this video. But you're going to get a little bit of a reprieve. It's kind of like all of this struggle is not for nothing. All of this struggle is for something bigger, a bigger purpose that you couldn't have seen until this moment in time. Now, the signs of Gemini and Libra will also be feeling this in a slightly more positive way. And the most challenging experiences with this total solar eclipse will be for the fixed signs, especially Taurus, Aquarius, and the sign of Scorpio. And then finally, I do want to mention the eclipse path for this eclipse because the people that are going to be impacted the most are the people that are going to be living where the eclipse is visible. And so the path of totality for this eclipse goes through Siberia and Russia, Greenland, the west coast of Iceland, and it also goes through Spain and Portugal. The thing that's really important about the fact that this eclipse is being visible in Spain is that over the course of these eclipses that are happening in the sign of Leo, 3 of them will pass through Spain. And so that shows me as an astrologer that something big is likely to be happening in the next couple of years involving Spain, a major change, disruption, potentially even something that alters the course of history in that country. And if you live in Spain, then these eclipses are likely to be stronger for you. And especially so if the eclipse itself that we're experiencing is hitting your chart directly, it's hitting any of your personal planets or angles around 20 degrees in the sign of Leo, then this is going to be a big one for you. And then the next big energy we're going to be experiencing in the month of August is the partial lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces, which will occur on August 27th of 2026. Now, typically partial lunar eclipses are the weakest of the eclipse energies. However, this one's going to pack a punch for like 3 different reasons. So first off, this is the final eclipse in the sign of Pisces. It's an out of sign eclipse. Even the mean node will have moved on. And so the north node is now fully in the sign of Aquarius, which means that this is the last chance to wrap up those old Pisces themes so we can move on to the new Aquarius themes that we're going to be moving into that are guiding us through this insatiable need to do something new, to focus on what's good for the whole as opposed to focusing solely on what's good for us. This is about the collective. This is about moving into a space where we're looking at things more rationally as opposed to intuitively and instinctually, because that is a very Pisces energy. This is less about spiritual growth and more about the growth of new ideas. And anything that's been left undone throughout the last couple of years where we've had the North Node transiting the sign of Pisces, this is the time where we're going to be wrapping it up. The other thing that's odd about this partial lunar eclipse is that it's happening just a few hours after a Mercury Cazimi goes exact on the exact same day on August 27th. And so that Cazimi energy is sort of like the instigating point of this eclipse. And this is on the opposite side of the full moon because a lunar eclipse always occurs when the full moon aligns with the lunar nodes. And even though Mercury technically won't still be Cazimi at the time of the eclipse coming exact, it's still in its chariot, which means that Mercury is in its home and exaltation in the sign of Virgo. And so it's going to already be protected from being burned by the sun. It's already going to be elevated in that way. And then as we move into the Cazimi period, this is a time of great revelation. This is a time of great clarity, of great understanding. This is a time of getting the details in order, new plans coming to fruition. And the full moon, this eclipse energy, is going to be pulling us out of our intellectual mind and helping us to intuit it, helping us to feel through what it is that we need to create, to envision it, because the moon in Pisces is a very visual, visionary energy. This is where our rational mind meets our intuitive, creative sense to cultivate a really massive change across many areas of our lives. Which leads me to the other point of this eclipse. Uranus is in the sign of Gemini, forming a very, very close T-square with the eclipse energy. This indicates big change. This is almost like you get a download, you can see it, taste it, feel it, experience it, you know how it's going to show up fully formed in your life, and then you're very quickly forced to make that change. That change is coming whether you want it to or not. And some of the revelations that come could be through this discomfort, this frustration, this inability to remain complacent in a certain area of our lives where we are bored, where we just want to make a change, where we know that we cannot stay stuck in the same pattern time and time again beyond this point. And so even though this is technically a weak eclipse, when you're looking at the whole spectrum of eclipses, this is still a big one. This is where change is coming, especially for those of you who have sun, moon, or rising, or any personal planets at the early degrees of the mutable signs. The mutable signs are Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. Those of you who will be feeling this in a more positive way are going to be those who have strong energy in the sign of Cancer or in Scorpio, also to a lesser extent Capricorn and Taurus. And just so you know, I will be doing an all signs forecast for each of these eclipses, so don't worry, that's coming up in just a couple of weeks. So again, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss that update, because I'm going to get into great detail about how this will be impacting you individually, this eclipse and the August 12th eclipse. And as for the eclipse path for this partial lunar eclipse, it's going to be visible from the Americas, Europe, and Africa. Anyone who's really having this eclipse occur at night. So for example, in my time zone, it's happening at 10:18 p.m., but visually it's going to be very subtle. Now, moving past the eclipses at the very end of this month, we're going to have a couple of things occurring that are hugely significant. The very first of those two things is that Jupiter will be trining Saturn for the very first time of 3 passes. This is going to happen on August 31st. And so this is the very first glimpse, the very first taste, the very first experience of something harmonious that's going to be manifesting in our lives between now and July of 2027. The first pass, as I mentioned, is right now August 31st. The second pass will happen on April 3rd of 2027, and the third pass is going to happen on July 11th of 2027. And I really think overall this is about building something long-lasting and having to kind of pull ourselves up from our bootstraps and create our own luck. Saturn is at its fall in Aries throughout this entire time, and Jupiter is not in the craziest position, but it's stronger than Saturn. And so this is about us looking at the challenges that we're facing and seeing an opportunity out of that challenge, or an opportunity that can be born from that challenge even. It's us actually getting to understand the lessons of Saturn and Aries, which we have not been able to understand fully because everything's just been happening. We've been having challenges that come up that we have to deal with in this haphazard way because it needs to happen quickly. Saturn doesn't like to act quickly, but in the sign of Aries, under the domain of Mars, it's forced to rush something that should not be rushed. And in the midst of all the chaos, it's hard to look at that and see where the lessons actually are. What are we supposed to learn? What are we supposed to build? What is this supposed to give us as an end result? It just seems like it's a lot of chaos and a lot of hardship. Jupiter comes in and it shows us what this all means. It gives us an opportunity to build something substantial or to pull ourselves out of the challenge in some way, to get a bigger perspective and to actually make something out of this that's productive. And Jupiter's all about lessons and wisdom. And so this is where the situations that have been unfolding, if they've been really terrible, really hard, really dramatic or traumatic for you, this is a time where you start to be able to make some meaning out of it. And that can be very important. Now, the thing I need to say about what's happening at the end of August is that it's not going to be as pleasant as some of these other passes, because the next day on September 1st, Mars will square Saturn. Mars is at its fall in the sign of Cancer. Saturn's at its fall in the sign of Aries. This is not a good energy. This is hardship and challenge that is typically insurmountable. This is a lot of frustration. This is a lot of passive aggressive, frustrating energy, challenges coming up that we don't feel prepared to deal with, that we have to deal with, and we're going to be very salty about it. And it's going to feel like we have to fix this right now, but we can't fix it right now. And emotions are going to be on high. Now, Jupiter's mitigating this somewhat. It is providing the opportunity, but I really feel that during this time, it's going to be hard to actually experience that, see it, to take advantage of it, because we're going to be in the middle of it, especially for those who have a lot of energy at the middle degrees of the cardinal signs, which are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Now, if you have a lot of Sagittarius energy, that is the one sign I would say might be benefiting from this the most. It might be easier for you to see the opportunity because Jupiter and Saturn will be forming a grand trine with your sun, moon, rising, personal planets, angles, whatever it is that's in the sign of Sagittarius. And finally, at the very, very end of this month, one more significant thing is happening. Venus is moving into its shadow period for the retrograde that will be happening in October. Now, Venus is in Libra this month, and it will be in Libra throughout half of that Venus retrograde. But the first half of the retrograde is going to begin in the sign of Scorpio. And so there's going to be two very distinct energies in this Venus retrograde. The first will be Venus at its detriment in the sign of Scorpio, squaring Pluto. That is going to be a lot of challenge and intensity, a lot of emotional and psychological intensity around relationships, around what we value, around our self-worth even, because Venus has a lot to do with that as well, around how we feel about ourselves. And not just how we feel about ourselves, but how we feel about all of our relationships in our lives, and whether we feel loved and appreciated, whether we feel like it's enough, whether we feel like we're enough. That is all going to be challenged during the first part of that retrograde. Now, the second part of the retrograde is what we're going to be revisiting. That's coming up at the end of August, right? Because that's going to be the time where Venus is in its home sign of Libra, and it's going to be a much nicer energy. This is a time where Venus will form a trine to the north node and a sextile to Jupiter. And so it's kind of like night and day. Like, we're going to feel so intense and be going through this dark night of the soul potentially with, our relationships, with what we value, with our ability to experience joy and pleasure in our lives. And then all of a sudden things are going to shift, and it's like the deep inner work that we had to do, the soul searching that we had to do, pays off, and we're able to revisit different relationships and aspects of relationship, aspects of our self-worth that are experienced much more positively, that we have value, that we want to hold on to. So it's kind of like that first part is a purge, especially because Pluto's involved. I mean, Scorpio as well. And the second part is a regrouping and a cultivation of what's already good in our lives. And so we'll talk a lot more about this. I'm going to have a full video on the Venus retrograde with a full forecast, including all 12 signs, that I will be doing in September. But in the meantime, just know that some of what's going on right now, especially the good stuff in your relationships, will be revisited later this year. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed my forecast for August of 2026. If you enjoyed this video, like it, share it with a friend who you feel could benefit from the information I shared with you today. Comment below and let me know how you're doing. And of course, subscribe to my channel. Also, if you're listening to this in the podcast, in the Cosmic Wellness podcast, make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and review. It helps me more than you know. All right, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.